Hi everybody, this is Q of Cars, I am Mike and this is Sir Cedric, our 1988 Mercedes-Benz 310 T1 fire truck, which we currently convert into an Overlander camper van. And before we continue with the conversion process, I want to give you finally a short review of this van and tell you why I think it's maybe the best base model for a camper van conversion. Let me give you 10 reasons for that. Number 1, a pretty cool design which stands out in the world of modern uniform vans and puts a smile in people's faces anywhere in the world. Old vans, same like my Ford Transit, always draw attention and get conversations started with strangers that we just met on the road. I especially like the front, the face with this sharp nose and then this Zorro style face mask which extends behind the orange indicators. And that looks a bit brawny and macho, and that is, I think, cool. Another cool feature is the wedge shape of the window, which extends then into the front fender. And then the aerodynamic line of the high roof version is, I think, strikingly elegant and much nicer than modern vans with a steeper angle roofline. Number 2, it has the perfect size. It's big enough for good interior layouts, but it's also small enough that you can park in a normal parking spot in the city and not get stuck in a narrow village road. Number 3, it is sub 3.5 ton, and that's especially important in Germany because you can drive it with a normal German car driver's license and you do not need a special truck license. Number 4, all technical components are very reliable and especially all the available engines are definitely good for 500,000 kilometers and more. Number 5, all T1 have simple old school technology which can be repaired really anywhere in the world. Number 6, no electronic stuff, no fragile control units, sensors or whatever which can left you stranded. I always like to say something that doesn't exist also cannot break. Number 7, good availability for parts. Especially technical spare parts can still be bought from your local Mercedes-Benz dealership within 1-day delivery. Lots of body panels are available as reproduction parts, though not always the best quality, but at least you can get them. And of course, the internet, especially eBay, is a great source for second-hand spare parts. So you can probably get everything that you need to keep your Mercedes T1 on the road running. Number 8, a Mercedes-Benz dealership can probably be found in really any country in the world, and that's other than, for example, a Fiat repair shop, which could be difficult to find in some parts of the world. Number 9, very cheap tax and insurance, at least here in Germany, because of its official classic car status, which is at least true for any T1 produced before 1992. The last 3 model years still have to wait a little bit to get over the 30-year threshold. And finally, number 10, even the high roof T1 still fits in a high cube shipping container, and that's great if you want to explore, for example, the Panamericana and want to ship it from Europe to America. To be honest, there are also 5 disadvantages which I do not want to hide. And number 1 is of course rust. After 30 years and more on salty roads, rust is unfortunately often a big issue, but on the other hand there are still good and rust-free, or let's say at least easily restorable T1 on the market, and former fire trucks are often a good base because they are usually well maintained. Second, even the high roof version won't be high enough to stand if you're taller than 180, and also the width with 1.68 meter is not enough for a transverse bed layout. But at least the height issue can easily be mitigated with aftermarket plastic roofs like the ones from Westphalia, which they sold for their Marco Polo and James Cook version. Third, it's an old van and it drives like an old van, so you have to like that. It's not as fast as a modern Sprinter and definitely not as easy to maneuver, especially if you do not have the power steering option. Fourth, there are some spare parts which need a little bit of investigation to find, so not every part is just easily available for next day delivery at your local Mercedes-Benz dealership. And finally, fifth, the T1 is quite cheap to maintain, but it's definitely not cheap to buy. In fact, it's even quite expensive to buy if you want to have a rust-free, low-mileage, high-roof version. So it's definitely not a budget choice, and you can probably get a 2015 Sprinter for the same money. Now let's dive a little bit deeper and see what exactly the Mercedes T1 is. The T1 was the smallest model of the Mercedes truck model range, intended for the 2.5 to 3.5 ton class. It is often called Bremer Transporter because the van was produced in the former Borgward factory in Bremen. It replaced the Harburger Transporter, aka Mercedes L206 to L307. Which Mercedes inherited from Hanno Henschel and which dates back to 1955. The T1 was first presented in 1977 and was a completely new development. The design by Stefan Heiliger was super modern compared to its predecessor, but also compared to its competitors like the Ford Transit. It was so modern that this styling stayed in production for 18 years till the arrival of the new Sprinter in 1995. Nearly 1 million units of the T1 could finally be sold. That's a record for Mercedes trucks, which still stands today. My T1 is a 310 version, which means it has a total weight of 3.2 ton and a 2.3 liter petrol engine with 95 horsepower. As the curb weight is 2.1 ton, I have more than 1000 kilogram, which I can use for the van interior and for the luggage. That's plenty. With 2.53 meter, it's the medium length version. It has 2 sliding doors, including sliding windows, which will allow us to create a very open plan indoor-outdoor layout for the van later. It also has the optional 270-degree wide opening rear doors, which are a very nice feature. And even more important, it has the high roof with an interior height of 1.83 meters, so I can comfortably stand, and it was an absolute must-have. The usable area of the van is 3.3 meter, or if you include the front seat area, it's 4 meter long, 1.68 meter wide and 1.83 meters high. Originally, this van was a fire truck ordered by Degussa, the gold manufacturer, in 1988, so it's now 34 years old. The special equipment was produced by Ziegler, a German company with 125 years of history, which produces all kinds of fire trucks. This one was equipped with slide-outs for oxygen cylinders and protective gear for chemical accidents, and of course a siren and flashing blue lights. Degussa paid 63,000 Deutschmarks for the truck in 1988, 43,000 for the base van and 20,000 for the Ziegler conversion. To put that in comparison, for the same money, Degussa could also have bought a new 300S EW126 S-Class for one of its board members as well. I bought the van first-hand with only 34,000 km on the clock. That's only 1,000 km so far per year. I got a full file of service history, a fully stamped service book, the original order documents and so on. It's in nearly rust-free condition and nearly without any dents and scratches. Unfortunately, these vans are not cheap anymore, at least not the high-roof versions with low mileage and in good condition. In general, tatty but drivable, surely rusty, high-mileage T1 start at around €2,000. They are cherished for export to Africa and probably still run there for another 30 years. Nice low mileage 310 low roof can be found for around €10,000. Unfortunately, sellers ask for a high premium if you are looking for a high roof, as good ones are quite rare. I paid €15,000 and I think that's the current market value in this condition and with this history. Diesel versions generally fetch a 10 to 20% premium compared to petrol engine versions. Totally beyond are the prices for the super rare 4x4 conversions. My car with four-wheel drive would probably be valued at over €30,000 empty and without camper conversion. Now let's check out the cabin. It's easy to enter, it's quite spacious, and a big surprise are the seats because they are good and reasonably comfortable, something that I did not expect. My expectations were much lower. They can be adjusted in multiple ways, up and down, forward, backward. Also the backrest can be adjusted. So I am very positively surprised and would say you can use that on a long journey without getting problems with your back. The dash looks dated by modern standards and still very truck-like compared to modern sprinters. You have your instruments, switches for lights and wipers, a control for the heater, and that's it more or less. Well, okay, I also have a switch for the former flashing blue lights and the siren, which unfortunately had to be deactivated to get the van registered for private ownership. Surprisingly, there is no glove box, nor storage pockets, not even a proper space to store the owner's manual or the parking disc. And that's hard to believe because usually Mercedes takes these kind of details into consideration. Well, probably they were a bit unthoughtful when they designed this car here. For a cold start, the van has an old-fashioned choke. There is one desirable option which my van does not have, and that's power steering. So when parking, it's quite exhausting to turn the wheel, but I mean, it's possible. Then you are maybe surprised about the shift pattern of the manual gearbox because it's a dogleg 5-speed, which means first gear is left and back. Same like the sporty ZF in my Fiat 130 Coupe. And that's a bit surprising to have this kind of gearbox in a van. But of course Mercedes has a reason for that. The first gear is only used in special occasions when starting at a hill. On a flat road you just start with second gear straight up and suddenly you have a normal H shift pattern with 4 usable gears, second to fifth. Shifting is reasonably precise. It takes a little bit of force, especially shifting down, especially from third to second gear. That's why I sometimes just rely on torque, stay in the higher gear with quite low revs, but the engine doesn't seem to be bothered. Driving the T1 you positively noticed a very good visibility. Size is not intimidating with 5.23 meter long and 1.97 meters wide. It is quite exactly the size of a modern Mercedes GLS. What about power? I would quote Rolls-Royce and say sufficient. Really, no joke, that's the perfect word. Because the 310 definitely has enough power to overtake a truck, which in Germany is allowed to go 80 but probably drives more like 90 kilometers per hour, and that's absolutely no problem to overtake. Top speed of my 310 is 130 kilometers per hour. A very good cruising speed on the Autobahn is 100 kilometers per hour or 60 miles per hour. Then the engine feels completely unstressed and the noise in the cabin is really quite low, so you can easily have a conversation with your fellow passenger. At low speeds the engine noise is really very restrained. I had the situation when stopping at a red light that I thought, oh, my engine died because I missed this proper truck light engine note, and this one does not have it, which is not totally surprising because the engine comes from a 230e, just with carburetor and not with the petrol injection. Brakes are discs at the front and drums at the back. Of course, they don't have the same grip like modern cars, but it's still acceptable for relaxed traveling. Is the petrol engine T1 a gas guzzler? In web forums you can sometimes read 15 liters, 18 liters per 100 kilometer, or one guy said, oh, I had a 310 delivery truck in the 80s and I needed 20 liters. But how did this guy drive? Probably fully loaded on the Autobahn, pedal to the floor all day long because he was in a hurry. And is that the way you enjoy your old T1 in a holiday? Probably not. I drove this van 750 km from Köln to the Alps on the Autobahn with 100 km per hour average, and I needed exactly 11.7 liters per 100 km. And that's definitely not too much for a van like that. The worst I recorded was 13.2 with mixed city and Autobahn drive. We will see if that changes when the van is finished, but the fire truck equipment was also quite heavy, so I don't think the van will be much heavier than before, but I would definitely not be afraid to buy a petrol engined T1 if you find a good, nice, rust-free example. If you own a T1 yourself, maybe with diesel engine, please leave a comment with your experiences concerning achievable mileage. Before finishing this video, I want to give you an overview of the various available models because it's easy to get completely confused. There are 3 different wheelbases and overall length available, combined with 2 different heights. For a van conversion, the medium wheelbase together with a high roof is probably the best combination. Unfortunately, the whole market knows this very well, and consequently this configuration is by far the most expensive on the market. Now let's bring some light into the various model designations which derive from the overall weight and the power of the engine. It's freaking complicated, so I don't want to annoy you with too many details. Roughly speaking, the first number is the weight in tons, always rounded down. The second and third number is the horsepower divided by 10, mostly rounded up. And the diesels got an additional D. Generally, the model name does never say anything about the length or the wheelbase. Well, I would say rather confusing for newbies. Lots of T1 on the market have the small diesel engines. They are absolutely okay if you have a relaxed style of traveling, because obviously 65 horsepower in combination with 3 tons of weight might be a challenge, but it is still enough to conquer the world, or better say drive around the world. The best engine choices in my eyes are the top versions of both the petrol and the diesel engine. That's the 310 and the 310D. The 310 petrol has a 2.3 liter engine with 95 horsepower and later 105 horsepower. Codename is M102. And the 310 diesel has a 2.9 liter diesel engine with 95 horsepower. Codename is OM602. Both of these engines are very reliable, but that are the other engines as well. But these are reasonable, powerful, and it's nothing compared with a modern Sprinter, but you can overtake a truck and get up a hill without starting to sweat. The advantage of the 310 diesel is of course a more economical consumption, and the advantage of the 310 petrol is a more quiet and comfortable ride. I wouldn't say one is better than the other, it's really up to personal taste. Well, I think enough for this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, comment and subscribe, especially if you don't want to miss the next episode of our van conversion series. And of course, I would like to know what you like about the T1, or why you would maybe choose a different model for your own van conversion project. See you next time.